Welcome to the Unsearching Series, a podcast and contemplative space where silence supports understanding and awareness returns to its natural rhythm. In this episode, we examine healing through the lens of brain function and nervous system regulation, focusing on how internal states shape neural organization and long-term patterns of experience. From a neuroscience perspective, change emerges through repeated physiological and attentional conditions that guide the brain toward adaptation and stability. This conversation is presented in the tone of a clinician and researcher, grounded in principles of neuroplasticity, autonomic balance, and learning science. The material explores how attention, chemistry, and electrical rhythm interact to influence perception, emotion, and behavior at a foundational level. As you listen, attention may rest naturally while understanding unfolds. When internal conditions settle, the nervous system often recognizes safety, creating the biological space through which healing processes emerge. Why the brain maintains established patterns. From an evolutionary and neurological perspective, the human brain developed under conditions where environmental stability could never be assumed, requiring rapid learning from experience in order to preserve life and reduce exposure to threat. Through this process, the brain became highly specialized in pattern recognition, prediction, and reinforcement of responses that once proved effective under specific conditions. When a particular emotional or behavioral response reduced uncertainty or increased survival probability, neural circuits supporting that response strengthened through repeated activation, gradually becoming efficient and automatic. Over time, these circuits operated with minimal conscious involvement, creating the subjective experience of fixed tendencies, preferences, and traits that feel personal and enduring. At the synaptic level, repeated activation increases connectivity and firing efficiency, allowing established pathways to dominate neural processing with minimal energy expenditure. This efficiency bias explains why familiar internal states remain dominant even when circumstances evolve, as the brain continuously favors predictability and energetic conservation. From the brain's perspective, stability emerges through repetition rather than evaluation of present conditions, which means previously learned responses continue to guide perception and reaction long after their original context has passed. Resistance to change therefore reflects neural efficiency and survival prioritization rather than psychological deficiency, illustrating how deeply adaptive mechanisms can later appear restrictive when viewed outside their original biological purpose. Part 2. How the body encodes emotional experience. Emotional states extend beyond subjective feeling and manifest as complex physiological events involving endocrine signaling, autonomic regulation, immune modulation, and metabolic adjustment. Each emotional experience produces a corresponding chemical and electrical signature within the body, influencing hormone release, muscle tone, cardiovascular rhythm, digestive activity, and inflammatory response. When these physiological states repeat across time, the body adapts by recalibrating baseline functioning, gradually learning to anticipate and reproduce familiar internal conditions with increasing speed and precision. As this adaptation progresses, physiological responses initiate before conscious appraisal occurs, creating the experience of emotional reactivity arising automatically and independently of deliberate thought. Neural pathways connecting emotional memory, sensory input, and bodily response become tightly coupled, allowing minimal stimulus to trigger full physiological activation. At this stage, Intellectual understanding alone rarely alters experience, since conditioning resides within autonomic and endocrine systems that operate beyond reflective awareness. Identity, therefore, emerges as an embodied pattern shaped by repetition, with the body functioning as an archive of prior emotional environments rather than a passive recipient of conscious intention. Part 3. The neurobiological effects of meditation. Meditation alters brain function through sustained modification of attentional engagement, producing measurable changes in neural oscillatory patterns and network coordination. When attention remains habitually oriented toward evaluation, anticipation, and mental simulation, neural activity reflects heightened beta-frequency dominance associated with vigilance and task-oriented processing. As attention stabilizes and becomes anchored in present sensory awareness, beta activity gradually yields to alpha rhythms associated with relaxed alertness, while deeper meditative absorption supports theta oscillations linked to learning, memory integration, and neural plasticity. These shifts carry functional significance because predictive processing relies heavily on stored representations of prior experience, whereas neural reorganization occurs most readily when attention remains anchored in present sensory input. As habitual emotional circuits receive reduced attentional reinforcement, their activation diminishes, allowing alternative pathways to emerge without suppression or force. Meditation, therefore, influences the brain by altering information flow rather than eliminating mental content, creating conditions where unfamiliar internal states provide new data for neural updating. Through repeated exposure to these states, the brain gradually revises its predictive models, supporting adaptive reorganization at both structural and functional levels. Part 4. Healing as a function of nervous system regulation. Physiological healing unfolds most effectively under conditions of autonomic balance, where the nervous system signals environmental stability and internal coherence. During periods of perceived threat, sympathetic activation prioritizes energy allocation toward defense, limiting resources available for cellular repair, immune modulation, and tissue regeneration. As nervous system activity shifts toward parasympathetic dominance, metabolic resources redistribute toward maintenance and restoration processes, supporting reduced inflammatory signaling. Improved hormonal regulation, and enhanced cellular communication. Meditative states facilitate this shift by stabilizing respiration, reducing muscular tension, and promoting coherent neural firing patterns, which collectively communicate safety to subcortical regulatory centers. As safety becomes established internally, neural plasticity increases, enabling reorganization of previously rigid circuits without chemical or psychological coercion. Healing, therefore, arises as a biological consequence of state regulation rather than cognitive effort, illustrating why sustained calm awareness exerts greater influence on long-term change than strategies based on exertion or control. Part 5. Identity change through repeated internal states. Transformation of identity emerges through consistent exposure to internal states that differ from previously dominant patterns, allowing the nervous system to acquire new reference points for regulation and prediction. States characterized by calm awareness, sensory presence, and emotional neutrality generate distinct neurochemical environments that support alternative neural firing patterns and physiological baselines. Each repetition of these states provides experiential input that gradually reshapes synaptic organization, endocrine responsiveness, and autonomic tone. As unfamiliar internal conditions repeat, the nervous system recalibrates its expectations, integrating new patterns into its predictive framework and reducing reliance on older conditioned responses. This process unfolds incrementally, often without dramatic subjective markers, as the brain prioritizes continuity and stability even during reorganization. Over time, repeated exposure to regulated states consolidates into enduring traits, illustrating how identity evolves as a biological expression of practiced internal conditions rather than a conceptual reconstruction of self. As this episode comes to a close, allow a brief moment to notice the internal state you are in right now, since awareness itself often signals the nervous system toward balance and coherence. The brain changes through experience. An understanding can become an experience when it's received without urgency. When internal conditions settle, reorganization unfolds quietly, guided by the intelligence of the nervous system itself. If this episode supported clarity or regulation in any way, you are welcome to extend that support outward. Liking this video helps it reach others who may benefit from grounded, science-based conversations about healing and change. Sharing allows this perspective to circulate beyond this space. Subscribing to Zest ensures continued access to long-form explorations within the Unsearching series. Thank you for spending this time here and for contributing to a space where awareness is allowed to return to its natural rhythm. Until next time,